Welcome, everybody. We are having our second day of the baseball venues webinar, kind of going over today tips and tricks. I'm Brian Bray. I'm the general manager of the venues team, and we've got our entire team here to work with you guys. Let me introduce these guys real quick, and then we'll kind of go over a little bit about what we'll be seeing today. First, we've got Andrew Pearson. He leads our venue support team. Andrew's been with the company for a very long time. He's been our resident expert in Click Effects, and we're really happy to have him leading that support team. Also in that support team, we've got Cole Taylor. Cole has been with us for about 18 months now. He has been our bright star, the guy we like putting in front of the camera a lot. So you'll end up seeing a lot of Cole and a lot of opportunities as we move forward. And then Logan O'Neill is on the team as well. Logan's been with the company, was it 3 years now, Logan, I think? And he's got a very good knowledge base of what's going on and be a lot of help for the rest of the team. And then we'll hear from Owen Seaton a little bit later in our webinar, and let me tie things up with Owen at the end of it. Owen is our head of sales for venues. Today, as we head into the webinar, we are going to look at we're calling this tips and tricks, but it's basically we're going to take a look at a headshot template, see how that works for you guys and how to set that up. We'll also be setting up some prime control panels and kind of walking through how that can help your production and make things a little easier for you. And then taking a look at prime actions and functions towards the end, just really taking a look at how prime can make your production pop and some of the really cool things that you can do there. We will have an answer and question period of time after to really talk about individually what you guys had questions on that we may not have touched. Maybe some things that you guys would like to know. Maybe hey, there's this one situation in my room, we can talk about that. We've got 30 minutes set aside for that. We may have a little more time, but we're more than happy. So keep those questions. If while we're doing the presentation, you have a question about something that's being shown at the moment, if you'll just jump into the chat and type in your questions, as soon as we see them, we'll alert the person that's presenting at the time, and he'll jump into that and get going with that. So really looking forward to this. We'd love to have some input from you guys. And then just as a reminder, as we did with the first webinar, which was on Tuesday, that's already up on the YouTube channel. It's already out. We'll put the link in the chat for you guys here. If you can go ahead and do that for me, Jacob, that'd be great. And then I want to also point out that we're going to put these two videos in our help.chiron.com website, and at that place you guys can see our best practices document. You'll see a startup guide on how to do some things. There's a lot of PDFs that are very helpful and informative, and then we'll have these two days of video in that section as well. So there'll be multiple places that you can find this, and if not, reach out to any one of us here on this call. We can help you out there if you can't find it. So without further ado, Logan, I believe you're kicking us off. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, take it away, buddy.
Yeah, thanks. I'll be kicking the day off with a demo over a headshot template we've created. So the key points I'll touch on today are XML sources, data views and controllers, player selector, and how we can incorporate Prime to add some visual flair to these graphics. So to begin, I'll just start setting up an XML source. So go to Settings, Data Settings, and once we're in the Data Settings window, we can click the XML Source tab. From here, you can see we have some sources already entered. And if you wanted to create a new source, we could click New as well. I'll go over these options with the already created data source that we have down here named Vandy XML. So we right-click and hit Edit. We can see that we have a name, a type, a method, and a path. So for today, we'll name this Vandy XML. We'll use the type XPath. And then for method, we'll use File System Watcher. This essentially just tells the program we're looking for a file within the computer and to watch it for any updates. And the path here is just where the file lives at on the computer. So once we have that created and those parameters input, you can right-click that source and we can verify the XML is coming into the system. And as we can see here, we are getting this raw XML data. So now that we have the raw XML data into the the computer, we need a way to format it. So to do that, we need to use an XML data view. So clicking over here to the XML data views.
I'm not quite sure how to
Sorry,
help.
1 second. I have my Alexa. There we go. So in the data views, it's pretty similar to the previous tab we have already created. So on this side, we have already created data views, and on the right side, we have data controllers, which I'll hop into after we create the data view. So we'll go ahead and edit this data view that we have here. This is our XML home lineup Vandy data view. Below this, we have our XML source that we just created, which is the Vandy XML. Below that, we have a base XPath. Essentially, this is just a string of text that tells us which part of the XML we want to pull from. So in example, this is pulling from team 2, which is the home team player that is not in spot 1 on the lineup, or I'm sorry, spot 0 on the lineup. Below this, we have max rows, which is how many rows of data we want to pull into the table. And below that, we're using a sort order of spots because we want to sort it by the position of the batters. So we can preview this data with this key. And as you can see, now we formatted it in a nice table. We'll scroll over here. And right here, there we go. So we have it sorted by spot, ascending order, and we have 10 spaces. So now that we have the data view created, we need a way to control it, which leads us back to the data controllers I had mentioned previously. As with the other two, we can create a new one. We could do either a data view rotator or a data row selector. Today we'll work with a data row selector, but if you needed to do something like out of town scores or run through data on a automatic basis, you could use a data view rotator. This will allow you to set up a data view and then rotate through it on a predetermined interval. But like I said, we'll be using a row selector. So I'll go ahead and select the one we already have here. We double click it and we'll get into the settings of this. So we have name, we have the data view that we just created. This is the table of information. And then we have the display columns that we want the machine to look at. Once we have that configured, we can hit OK. And we have basically set up an entire XML source, a data view, and a controller for use with this graphic. I'll go into what that looks like shortly, but to recap here, we set up an XML source so we can ingest the data. We set up an XML data view to connect that raw data into a table. And then we've created a data controller to enable a user to manipulate the data on screen. If we go over here to the right, we have this is our data controller button, and we can take a look at this, and it shows our data controller. I'll demonstrate how this works shortly, but first I wanted to get into the graphic itself and take a look at how we have the data linked. So this is the graphic in question. We'll hit it in the editor. There are a lot of sub windows here, so I'll only focus on a few that we'll utilize today. The first I'd like to go over is our data sheet. You may be familiar with this. Essentially, this is how we can link all the objects in this scene to our XML data table, or our data view, I should say. So we have it linked here, and then with the field name we're looking for is add bats, and then we just want it on row 1 because we want the selector to choose the row for us. Below this, we have our data update windows options. This essentially tells each parameter here what controller to utilize. So we want to use the Vandy player selector controller so that we can manipulate all these within the same controller. Our headshot also works off the same sort of line of thinking. We have it set to the data view. We have it set to the field name of uni or uniform, and then we also have it connected to the controller. So now I can show you on the Prime side of things how we could, how we added the transitions and a few other data related things. So we can, yeah, you got to switch over to Prime. I'll switch over on my end as well. All right, so I'd also like to mention that with Prime, we have the ability to act on Prime scenes from another computer. So for example, I could edit this headshot within Prime while it's out of program, and the changes will take effect next time it plays out in the program on click effects. So the first thing I want to cover is how we have this set up from a Prime perspective. For starters, if I had manually wanted to make this graphic advance, what will happen is it will call an action that is tied to a blur, and then that blur then hits a trigger to go to the next keyframe. So for example, if we were to change par player number, which is the string that is tied to this this graphic, we could change it to, I believe 2 works. Yep. And we see that it switches to the next player. Well, it switches to player 2, and then it cues the blur action. So down here, we have our timeline. The timeline, there is a blur action here. And if I can just play this, and it will play the blur out for you. And then we have keyframes here. So if I click on this guy, we have a trigger keyframe, and this tells it to go to the next player. So if we take a look at this parameter that I just used to advance the graphic, which is par player number, this is the string that we're accessing within ClickFX data controller to manipulate the graphic. So if we hop back over into ClickFX real quick, I can explain parameters a bit more and how we have those set up. So back into the graphic editor on ClickFX, we have our parameters window. Now this window is sort of the back end of how we can talk to Prime. So for instance, our our par player number, we have it set to a binding. This is very similar to how we have XML sources set up. So we would need to bind this to an XML source or a data view. We'd also need to bind this to a controller in order for it to talk to Prime properly. So we do that simply by right-clicking, setting a binding to a controller, which is our Vandy player controller. And then we can also, if this weren't already set to a binding, we could edit it and add it to an XPath binding. So essentially, this is just XPath. We hit our XML data view source, and then we go field name uni because we want to sort by uniform number. So that's how we would hook these up through the back end of Prime. All right, so now I think if we switch back to Prime one more time, I'll dive into the headshot image switching, and we'll take a look at how that works. So let me swap over myself, go back to the front of this keyframe. All right, so we're back in Prime, and we have a couple of things to look at here. So I'll take a moment to just show the scene tree and just to highlight, this is our player headshot that we want to modify. So within this, if we take a look at the right, we have a properties screen here. And the properties, we want to kind of focus on this image file. So this is our image bank, essentially, where we have all the files for the headshots. We're utilizing uni number or uniform number to sort and pull data. So all of our headshots that we want to pull are going to be named their uniform number. So now to execute this, essentially we use an expression. So the expression here that we're going to use today is going to be called eHeadshotPath. This expression basically is a string of text that is pointing to a file named 2. That file named 2 is essentially the player number here. If we were to go to the par player number and change this par player number to 42, we then get the expression to look for the image file 42, and then it pulls that, and then we also get the trigger to play along with it. So just to give a quick recap here, we're using parameters to choose a file. In our case, it's a headshot image. Then we're using an expression string to pull the headshot image that's tied to the uniform number. And finally, we have a blur action that's set to trigger upon a value change, which is our par player number. And this is just a brief overview of how we can quickly set up a headshot template. So I'll go ahead and kick this over, I believe, Cole, to kind of dig deeper into this.
Sweet deal. Yeah, thanks, Logan.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, great job sort of going over headshots and how Prime is interacting with ClickFX. Obviously, for those who maybe didn't make the first session, we kind of explored a little bit about control panels and how Prime, the back end of ClickFX now, the Prime engine, and Prime, if you're not familiar with it, Prime CG is Chiron's sort of flagship CG product. A lot of really, really cool functionality that's now being brought over to ClickFX. So for those who might have missed yesterday or 2 days ago, and just to do a bit of a recap of sort of what I covered, was kind of going through and seeing how we can create sort of simple control panels within Prime, integrate those into graphics that then we can play out in ClickFX to make our lives and workflow as operators a little bit easier, more straightforward, more streamlined, and have these graphics kind of work with us. So one of the big ones that we went over was a team selector. So you can see here, I have a line score graphic. I have a sort of matchup here with the score, a couple teams. I have another line score, and then I have a bug that's going out on one of our SDI channels over here. I pop up to my view sort of menu here, my view drop down, and go to scene control panels. And kind of how Logan was showing in Prime, these are sort of the way that we can visualize those control panels within ClickFX. Same idea if you're a CG operator, and you use Prime, you'd be really familiar with something like this. But I wanted to show in sort of what I went through on Tuesday there was a really cool function that we like to set up for pretty much all of our sports venues customers, is a team selector. So obviously in the stadiums nowadays, excuse me, you have graphics and GIPs, and you might have an outdoor marquee that shows who's playing today and maybe a live update of a score and time, something like that. We can, with the use of Prime control panels, go ahead and affect all of those graphics at once, instead of having to go in at the beginning of a day and edit maybe 5-10 graphics and save new copies of them, or get your media team to go and actually package out different videos or stuff like that have today's matchups. You can do it all from within Prime. So just going to do a quick change here. You can see we're using tricodes for identifying home and away teams. I'll show once we move over to the Prime side that there's a lot of really flexible ways that you can sort of do this. You can sort of make it up however works best for your workflow. But in this case, I'll just go ahead and change the tricode. So I'll go to Oakland, and you can see here right away. Yeah, great job, Andrew, for switching over. You can see the Oakland A's logo now appears up in my GIP, up in the sort of top right section of the screen. You can see down in the line scores, Oakland has appeared as that visit team. I'll go ahead while you're still on this view, Andrew. I'll change to, let's say, LA for the home team. You can see that sort of takes effect right away across all of the different mediums. Again, something that's super useful that it'll end up saving you time and making your workflow a little bit more simplified. And then, I mean, speaking about colleges or even minor league teams, you might have some freelance or student operators that come in. Another way just to kind of extract some of the editing out of the graphic and put it in a nice, clean way that's a little bit more like non-destructive towards graphics. Make things super easy for inexperienced operators to be able to pop in and just make changes. All right, so now that we've sort of went over that a little bit, let's kind of dig into Prime. I'll switch over here to our Prime system. This is Logan's headshot. I'll just close out of the editor here. I'm not going to save that. So actually, sorry, I'll take one step back. I kind of got ahead of myself. Back over to the support box there, Andrew. One thing when we're thinking about how Prime and ClickFX is interacting, obviously we have the Prime CG product that is strictly, a CG playout box, very, very flexible, obviously. But over in ClickFX, we have a way of sort of integrating the Prime engine graphics and all the really cool stuff that comes along with it over into ClickFX. And where we need to start, the easiest way is going to be creating a graphic in ClickFX, popping over to Prime, opening it up. So all of that sort of play in, effect out, logic is already baked into the graphic since I've created in ClickFX. So just to do this quick, I'll go ahead and just right click on one of my media button empty boxes here, go to create graphic. And here again, I'm just creating a graphic that then I'll be able to pull up in Prime. So throw a text box here. It doesn't need to say really anything. We could just say logos. And then down here, I'm just going to save it. And we can see, I'll throw it into my baseball folder just to make it a little bit more obvious. And we'll call it a logo selector. Cool. Now, when I close that out, you can see it popped up here. Now that we've done that and we've created a graphic that kind of brings that ClickFX logic into the graphic, we'll pop over to Prime here and we'll start working on it. So for those who haven't seen Prime before, this is the sort of CG playout side of Prime. And then we have the editor side of Prime. And you can see just up in the top corner, I'm just sort of switching back and forth between the two of them. How things are sort of laid out here. Up in the top left, obviously you have all of your different sort of search and view and config functions. Down below that, you have the project that you'd be working in. So again, when you set up a ClickFX box, you're going to set up a user, and that would then become your Prime project. So for this one, it's an NAB 2024 project. And you can see down here in the right-hand side, here are all my different scenes. And you can see that baseball folder that I went ahead and saved my file to. So I'll click on that. We'll let it load here for a second. And see here, we have our logo selector graphic that we just created over in ClickEffect. So I'll go ahead, right click that, pop it into the editor. And now you can see that one text object that I created. Right off the hop, we can just get rid of that since we're not actually using it for this one. Since the selector that we're looking to build is just a very basic home and away matchup, and then showing you guys how to create a control panel that also sort of ties to those and lets you affect it. So when we're thinking about logos and whatnot, obviously planning for the assets that that we have and organizing them in the right file structure is really important. So we have our project here in Prime. Before we sort of go into working with it, go ahead and make sure that we have our assets sort of in line. So I'll minimize out of that. Essentially, what do we need for you know, a good logo selector? Obviously, all the team's logos in the league. What we want to do is try to logically name them. So then when we go to build this control panel, there's logical names that are going to tie those graphics to what we end up putting into the control panel. So here, you can kind of see my folder structure here. So Prime projects, I'm going to go to that NAB 2024 project. And then this is sort of the hierarchy or the folder structure that Prime builds as you add clips or images or anything into it. This is where all of those assets are going to end up living. So for this one here, since they're pictures, they're images, it's in the image folder. Obviously a lot going on in this one since it's been a pretty busy project, but MLB is the one that we want to go to. And then you can see here, there's folders with every different team's tri-code. Just to jump into one, we have, so Arizona, ARI, and then in that is ARI, again, named just the same thing, something super logical, the tri-code for the team. That's the True Vision TGA. That's the image file. This could be a PNG, JPEG, any sort. So now that we know that we have all of these, images for our logos all in there, they're all the same aspect ratio, all the same resolution. So, when we're switching between them, they're not having to scale weird or anything like that. Now we can start sort of building those assets into Prime. So we'll pop back over to our editor here. And you can see in the editor, to those who haven't seen Prime before, it might look a little bit familiar. You have similar things to, like a After Effects or Photoshop sort of layout. You have your scene tree sort of down here in the bottom left that I know Logan went through a little bit during his headshot demo there. You have up in the top left, here's your toolbox. So this is where we're going to be able to add in, obviously, different items that are sort of asset-based up in the top, those graphics. There's some different effects that we'd be able to add on to those graphics or onto the scene as a total. And then down near the bottom, some different resources. I like to think of these as sort of like the flashy, logical sort of items that then you can tie to the scene as well. So just right off the hop, we're going to add a couple different images in there. Again, it'll just show up as a box until I tie it to a file. But you can click and drag that around. I'll drag it sort of to the edge over here. Can pop into my scene tree, and I'll just name this something logical. So home logo. Easy one there. I can go to my scene tree and copy and paste, and now I have two of them. I'll spread them out here. I can highlight both of them and pop up to my alignment if I wanted to and say align those vertical centers. I can move this guy over to the right side safety title. So now we have a little bit of a better looking one, a better looking sort of, two matchups. Again, with this, just trying to stay super basic, you would end up throwing this into a GIP graphic, adding some cool movement in the background, whatever your creative team wants to do to match kind of like your show's look and feel. Last thing I'm going to do is just pop over here and obviously make sure we're sticking with our naming conventions. So we'll just have away logo. So now that we have our two logos there, again, these are just sort of white box placeholders currently for the logos that we're then going to tell the program to look at. The next thing that we want to do now that we have these two here, we're going to make our control panel. So we're ready to do that. we can pop down to our resources section of our toolbox and click the control button or control panel button there. You can see a new pop-out window has just showed up, right? And as I switch between the two, see this is my canvas. This is what my toolbox looks like, bunch of cool assets. I click over to control panel, a couple new things show up. So these are obviously our tools, our items that we can throw into a control panel. Again, these things can be crazy complicated, and you could run your whole show off of one control panel if you wanted to, or you could make it a super simple, straightforward logo selector like we're going to today. The most straightforward and sort of foolproof one that I like to do is sort of like a drop-down selector. So that's going to be our combo box here. And again, just sort of clicking and dragging things around, logically naming things as I go ahead and go through it. So I'll make this my home combo, and then I can, copy and paste, create another one, drag it out. Go ahead and name this one my away combo. And then again, looking through here, maybe I'll throw a label over here, and this one can be pop up to the top here. Again, just naming things sort of logically so that when I go to tie data to it or tie logic to it, I'll be able to find it really quickly. Just making a copy, dragging it over. And this can be our away. Perfect. So super simple control panel that we've just created. Again, down here in our scene tree, we can see that obviously all those different items have sort of shown up now in the different sections. We have our scene group over here on our canvas, and under the resources, we have our control panel. The next thing that we want to do for these lists is go ahead and put some values into them so that when we go to the drop down and drop them down, we have teams to select from. So that kind of goes back to what I was showing in regards to the file structure. We want to create those logical names that then we can put into these combo boxes. So when we select those different values, we can then tie those to the graphics. So preemptively, I've just gone ahead and created a notepad here. Again, just going through and just taking those team tri-codes and just making them into a notepad. So I can copy that. And for the home and away, I'm just going to make them both be able to select any team. But, in your case, you would obviously have your home team or your home team's logos going into this home selector here. If you're in a stadium that, might not have an actual home team and it's sort of flexible depending on who's playing, you could have every team in whatever division in one and every team in the division in another. So, when that matchup's called, you can have the flexibility. I'm going to click on that combo box, go down to the advanced section in the bottom right-hand corner, find items, and then I'll click on the little ellipsis over on the side of the collection. The string collection editor pops open, and then that's where I'm going to end up pasting all of these different tri-codes into. And again, if you wanted to, go back and add more mid-season, something like that, or maybe there's a special version of a logo that you wanted to name. Let's say it's like Washington 2 or Washington breast cancer night, Washington military night. You can pop in here, create that little text thread that's going to tie back to the name of your logo that you want to put up onto the screen. And again, we'll go back and review this once we've completed as well. I know stuff like this tends to be a lot to take in, but I'm hoping to make it as detailed as possible. So when you guys go back and review it, try to do it for yourselves. Hopefully it's really understandable. So I can click OK to that one. I'll go to the away drop down here, go to collection. Again, I'm just going to paste everything in there. And now, perfect. We've done that. I can go ahead and do a quick save because we've done a little bit of work on this guy here. So again, that's saved it. The nice thing about Prime is I can now go back to the actual playout side of Prime, click and drag that logo selector, the graphic that I made into the playout section of Prime here. And now I can kind of double check my work, right? I haven't tied this to any logic yet. It's not actually going to play out the logos yet, but I can see that, okay, my control panel looks good. It looks the way that I want. I can go ahead and pull open these drop downs and I can see the the text that I just put in there. So we're in good shape. So now we can kind of move along a little bit to the logic side of how we're going to tie this control panel to those two graphics to select the two logos. So this is where, and Logan touched on it a little bit, the parameters, expressions, and conditions kind of get into play. Again, if you don't come from, like the coding world or development world, these things might be a little intimidating to you. Trust me, like when I first sort of saw this sort of stuff, it was definitely it's like, okay, this is something I sort of need to learn if I want to be an expert user of something like this. But I'd encourage you to try things out. There's a lot of really cool stuff in here that you can sort of try and evaluate within the software, and it'll tell you if you did it properly or not. There's a lot of autofill stuff that I'll show you now. So you saw Logan's project had a bunch of different parameters in there. We're going to go ahead and create two. So the first one that we're going to create, and again, this is where the whole naming convention sort of thing comes back. I'm going to call it P home team. And why do I call it P home team? P standing for parameter, and then home team. Again, just identifying from the name of it. So when I go to do things elsewhere in the software, I can quickly know. I type in a P, everything I see now is a parameter, right? The next thing that we want to see is the scope. So do we want this to be a scene parameter, a project parameter, or an application parameter? For me personally, since ClickEffects, it runs on the user basis, like I said, the one project, this NAB 2024 project, I like to make it a project parameter. So I know now the entire, oh, actually, I think I have some other project parameters named this. So let me, let me take one step back, and I'll name this home logo. Great. Sorry, I saw a value pop up there, and I guess that's from a previous one that I created elsewhere in the project. Sorry, just to sort of expand on the scope section here. The project, this parameter is then going to be available to be used in any scene that's within the project. So my ribbons, my marquee, my score bug on an SDI system or an SDI output, everybody's going to be able to look at this this parameter and then be able to, again, tie a logo to that parameter. So that's how you get that global effect where you're making a change to one graphic, but it's affecting everything, or one control panel and it's affecting everything. So we'll continue along with this. Again, we're not going to see a value pop in there yet, but we'll go ahead and create a P away logo, and we'll make this one a project parameter as well. So we've done those, guys. We're looking good in that sense. We're going to pop over to our logic section next. And within the logic section, this is where essentially we're going to say the value within this dropdown. So all the text threads and those different options that all the try codes that we just added in here, we now want to tell the software anytime you see it in there, tie it to this parameter. So tie it to the value of this parameter. And that's pretty much everything. Like within parameters, you can think of them, they're just values. They could be numbers, they could be text. It could, refer to a file. It could refer to anything, but it's essentially a value that then we can tell the software, use that value to affect this. So we'll go over to the logic section. We'll use the little add symbol to create a condition. Again, just doing a quick logical item here. We'll do C set logo. And from here, we'll pop over to the top here and add a property. And here's where it comes in with sort of the naming that we had. So as I type things in, you'll see that this is sort of like an autofill function. So let's start with the home logo. So we can see that parameter that we just built, P home logo. You can even click on that and press enter. And we want to say P home logo value is equal to the what did we call the combo box there? Home combo dot text. So all this is saying is anytime that there's text within here, I want to make sure that text, this value is now equal to the text that shows up in there. And so we've done it for the home side. Let's do it for the away side. the away logo value equals away combo dot text. And just quickly off the hop, obviously we don't have any text in here yet, but we can just say evaluate, right? We get a couple different sort of feedback check marks there, and sort of we're off to the races. Now that we have this condition made, we want to pop back over to our boxes up here, our combo boxes, and add a little bit of logic to that. So we want to say anytime that something happens within these combo boxes, let's run this condition, let's run this logic to say, oh, let's go ahead and update that home or away logo value, the parameter value. So clicking on the combo box, heading up here into the events tab, we're just going to go add, and text is fine because it's text that's showing up inside that combo box. And I want to say trigger condition set logo. And now you can see that's popped up there. Do the same thing for the away side. So on a property change, run this condition, click out of it. You can see it's set. Do a quick Control S just to save my progress along the way. And then now, if I pop up here and go to my properties, I go to the text. Let's just do test. Go ahead and do that. I can see over here, my home logo value has just changed. So again, just quickly doing, I'll write my name, Cole. And you can see the value down here has changed. Again, with the logic that is saying anything in that combo box, as soon as it's changed, I see a new value. Let's go ahead and make our logo parameter value whatever we see in there. And that'll eventually be that tricode as well. So I'll get rid of that for now. The last thing that we want to do is actually point those tricodes and these combo boxes and this parameter over to our graphics. All right, and that's where expressions sort of come into play. And this is where we're going to essentially like bring everything together and say, use that tricode to point to this file that has that logical naming, and let's go ahead and bind it to those images. I know it probably seems like a lot at this point, and I know I'm trying to go into a good amount of depth, but again, once you do it a couple times, you'll definitely sort of get the gist of it. So again, using sort of our logical naming methods for expression, you could do something like a lowercase e. And for this here, let's do so it'll be the home team. And what is our expression going to be? So we need to now point it to the actual file location that we have here. And since we're using our logical prime folders structure, we're already inside of the NAB project. We're already going to be talking about an image, so we don't need to adjust that. But we need the MLB and then the tricode section of it. So if we grab this stuff here quickly, and now we'll start to write our little string of an expression. So to add something with like a logical name, we want to throw it into quotations. So again, I just threw a left quotation, MLB slash, and then I'll throw a right quotation on that because that's going to stay standard across any of these logos that we end up selecting, right? They all come from that root of the MLB folder. So that's going to be the front of our value over here. And you can kind of see how it's like live building the value. Next, we're just going to do a space, add another plus sign, and here's where we bring our parameter value back in. So looking at down here, our logical name for the parameter value, so we can do p home logo dot value. Perfect. And then we're going to add again another section of it because we know that within our folder structure here, we have the tricode that's a folder, and then the tricode that is the image that we actually want to put as the logo. So we're going to add another backslash here. And then we're going to do another plus sign. Again, just sort of like compiling all of these different things together. And we're going to do our p home logo dot value because that's the tricode that's going to end up coming from this combo box. The last thing that we need to do, and I'll add another plus sign there, we need to add the actual finishing file type of the actual file. So in this case, like I said before, it's a TGA. This could be PNG, JPEG, MOV, whatever it might be. But again, we just need to sort of tell the software, hey, what does this file name actually look like? So then we can bind it to the file that's going to be our home logo within our graphic. So we go TGA, another close quotation, or sorry, a close marking there. And now you can see it has our value there. And since we don't have anything within our selector here, there's no value within our parameter. But just to do a quick check of work, I'll do a try code for Toronto. And you can see here the value that pops out, MLB Toronto.tga, which is exactly the file location for the Toronto logo. As sort of, I can click through here if it's going to let me. You can see here the last two sections of this file location and then the name of the actual file matches up right away. And then from there, this is where we're going to bind it to our logo that we originally set up. So just to quickly show you here before we take a step back and sort of review kind of what we've done or what we have done. Here's our binding. We're just going to, again, logically name stuff. So we'll go home logo dot file. Go ahead. And now you can see, obviously, the logo is a little small there, but it's already put that Toronto logo in there. And again, just to do like a little bit of proof of your work, you can start typing in, some different logos. And again, since we added that effect on change, sort of event over here to trigger the condition, to then trigger the change of graphic, it's changing as soon as it sees a new value. Again, just to take a bit of a step back, I know that, again, trying to kind of go through this and hopefully it makes sense to people of all sort of skill levels. What have we done? We've organized all of our files in logical ways within the image folder of our prime scene. We've made sure that all of our logos are indeed the same size and aspect ratio that makes sense for the graphic that we're trying to build. We've then gone ahead and created our prime scene. We've brought them in. We've named them something logically. We then went and created our control panel where we've gone ahead and imported our collection of items, which is all the names of the files. So just the actual name of the logos. In this case, they're tricodes. From there, we've gone ahead and created some parameters that we can then use logic through the set logo condition here to take the value from this dropdown and put them into our parameter value. We've then made an expression to take that parameter value that we've just gotten and essentially say, use that parameter value to determine what logo that we're selecting. And then we've gone ahead and binded that logo back to that original home logo that we've created. I'll go ahead and create a second expression here quickly just to do it for the away team. And essentially for this one, we can just copy and paste this entire thing and then make some adjustments. Since now we're just looking at the away logo. Just to be able to do this and show us as well what's happening, we'll do away. There it is, that parameter that we're tying it to, and it's the value of the parameter. And we'll do the same thing back here. And you can see here, again, we don't have anything in the parameter yet, but just to do a quick check, LAA, pop back over here, we can see it's pulling up that value properly. And now we can go ahead and bind it to our away logo dot files. Now they're really small, so we can pop over here to our properties and we can scale them up a little bit. again, something like this, you would kind of bake it into, maybe a GIP or a full screen marquee graphic, so that you could quickly go in and make these changes. Going to go ahead and Control S and save all this stuff. I can pop back into my Prime playout section of the software and click and drag that logo selector back in. And from here, super easy to just like quickly validate and test, what I've done, to be able to just like quickly say, before bringing it back over to ClickFX or kind of moving on with anything else, I can just validate it here right within the Prime software. Again, when I pop back over to ClickFX here and give things a second, edit it in the editor, and you can see right away this looks a lot more familiar to what we were just working on in Prime. I'm just going to throw this guy up here, and now I can pop over to the view section, scene control panels, and just like that, I have the scene control panel that I just created over in Prime. Something like that, 20 minutes or so, 30 minutes, it's something that you're going to end up doing once and then using it for your whole season, maybe changing a couple logos here and there or adding some stuff throughout the season, but something really, really straightforward to set up once you're familiar with the tools, obviously, without a tutorial or talking to somebody who's done it before, or being really keen to jump in and learn it. It might be a little bit daunting, but hopefully this kind of gives you the tools to be able to go back and try it for yourself. And if you have any issues with it, definitely reach out to be able to have us sort of jump in and kind of walk you through it. In regards to how do I get these parameters over into other graphics, we'll pop back over to Prime quickly, and I can just show you quickly in regards to maybe the one that we've already created. I created just like a quick graphic here. So this guy here, this is like our line score output. Again, it's a very skinny board. So showing you how you'd be able to bring those project parameters over and some of the logic over a little bit quicker. So your parameters, since I made it a project parameter, it's available for any scene within the project. Like I said, we're still in that NAB 2024 project. So I can go here to my link parameter section. Oh, I think I've clicked it a couple too many times. And pop that open. You can see there's a ton of project parameters in here already. I believe, I think the newest one should be down at the bottom for me here. I know there's been a couple different of things that we've done. So we can see the P home logo and away logo. So let's go ahead and sort of link these new parameters in here. This is the sort of way of having that one control panel that's going to be able to affect everything. And like I said, parameters, when you think about them, they're just values that in the most basic sense, they're values that you can then take and tie to other things, and having the ability to share those values throughout the whole application or throughout the whole project makes it really valuable to be able to scale your graphics and scale the data and scale all the logic kind of out amongst everything. Again, here, I'm just going to go for a quick save because I'll show you guys a bit of a quicker way of sort of going about it. I'm going to pop back over here to my logo selector, go to edit. I'll just grab my conditions by selecting it, and then there's a little save condition section. So we'll go ahead and just quickly do it here. Let's call it something that makes a lot of sense, like baseball condition logos. It's great. And I can do the same thing if I wanted to bring the parameters over, but that's okay since we're linking them. Excuse me. But I'm going to do the same thing for my expressions. So I'll save that one and I'll just name it baseball expressions logos. So now I can pop back over to the other graphic here and just kind of do the inverse where I load the expression in. So baseball expression, perfect. And you can see things are already starting to make sense. And then the last guy, oh, actually, I'm not going to need to bring that condition in since it's actually tying to the control panel. So disregard that section of it. But you can see here already, the graphic has started to take shape in regards to seeing the logos populate, from the previous selection of that control panel. All righty. How are we doing on time here, guys? I know I probably went into a good amount of depth. I apologize if I've gone over, but
You're doing great. I just say wrap up what you have there, and I think we have plenty of time. And Andrew's pretty good at keeping up with the clock, so no rush.
Cool. I know, like, this is obviously so far within this webinar, and even the one on Tuesday, this is probably the most like in depth that we've dug into how to actually do one of these control panels. Just I figured probably a decent time. If anybody has any questions at all, again, totally available to schedule some time outside of this meeting to be able to step you guys through this. But if there are any questions in regards to maybe what control panels can do, anything at all, feel free to ask for sure. Really, really cool stuff that, again, it can just like blow your show out of the water in regards to changing things in one place and reskinning everything. Maybe I'll just quickly touch on that, kind of how we're doing over on the support box. If I pop back over there, what I was showing before is obviously a little bit more of an in-depth control panel. So this is kind of where things can, you can like really, really dig into it. Andrew, if you pop over to the output screen, you can see here, I can actually change the look as well. I'll put up another one there. So I have a way of sort of reskinning. You can see the actual color of the entire graphic. So green, changing to gray, changing sort of like a bluey purple. Again, if you pop back over to the UI there, Andrew, this is just something that we've integrated into the control panel to be able to reskin your graphics for like those, special nights at the ballpark, or whatever it might be, a military night or something like that. I have it within the sort of counter up and down. So look 0 is the purple look. You can see up in the top here. Look 1 is the gray one, and look 2 is the green one. Again, like totally customizable to be able to reskin it in any different way. It doesn't just have to be colors. It could be a whole new graphics package essentially. And this is exactly something that would be brought over from like the years and years of development over in the Prime side of things. Like call it for NBC Sports. They're completely Prime CG through and through, where they might use the same graphics package through different sports or even different leagues, and then they'll use these looks to reskin those graphics, because obviously you want cohesiveness throughout all of your sports packages in regards to kind of what you're able to show and sort of the general look and feel, but you're going to change obviously a lot of the logos, the data that it's going to pull, the actual graphic look and feel, depending on what sport you're doing and what league you're using. So that's kind of where this whole reskinning section sort of jumps into it. And again, like taking it a little bit further from the control panel that we just made, it's the use of style sheets is sort of what we're doing. Again, using those tricodes to, in the same way, use them as parameters, go ahead, add in expressions to be able to add some logic to those parameters to define file paths, and then having style sheets as sort of like a lookup table for the graphics to be able to reference and say, oh, okay, when this graphic is when this tricode is in here, these are the colors I'm using. This is the font that I'm using. This is the logo that I'm using. So taking it one step further from just the logo and kind of the whole package that's going to go along with it. And I can show you just quickly here as well. If you're taking a look at the output page there, Andrew, if you look at the GIP section up in the top right, let's say I change this to Toronto from LA, you can see the color in the background's changing as well as the logo, as well as the text on the line score. That's what I'm talking about in regards to style sheets, where instead of just changing the logo, we're going to change the name of the team. We're going to change the font that it uses. We're going to change the color in the background, all sorts of things. So again, super flexible, and you can get crazy complicated and run your whole show off of something like this, or do something a little bit more straightforward in regards to just setting up a logo changer or something like that. I hope that gives you guys a bit of a scope and look into how Prime and control panels can be brought over to ClickFX to make your shows a lot more user friendly and streamlined. Give some time back to your operators or to the producer that's setting things up, or tech manager, whatever it might be. And hopefully I haven't lost too many of you guys throughout the way, for sure. I know stuff like this, especially to people who aren't familiar with kind of digging into the back end of graphic software, might be a little bit daunting, but again, definitely encourage you guys to jump in there and try it if you have some time, as we sort of approach the season here. And you know, if you need a hand, that's what we're here for sure, to be able to jump in and sort of share our knowledge and teach you guys along the way. Yeah, I guess we can throw it over to Andrew at this point.
I was going to say, Cole, do you want to go over the Whataburger graphic as well, real quick?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's another really useful one. Yeah, to show something a little bit more exciting, but see how it's also like fairly approachable as well. So we'll just clear everything off of here. Down here in the bottom, I'll pop over here to the SDI side, and I'll just do a little pop out so you guys can see it. We have nothing on the screen now, but over down here we have sort of a game that we've had created that uses a Prime control panel to be able to actually interact with the game and with the videos and the graphic in a total, or in total. So you can see, again, another control panel. Same idea, was set up over in Prime. The idea behind this one, it's a matching game, and it's something that the actual in-stadium host is going to host, and they're going to have some sort of a guest or a fan that's going to say, okay, we're going to do this matching game. We're going to show everything. Here's what positions everything is. We're going to use this control panel to click back and reset all. And now, the fan's going to say, okay, card 1 and card 7. Oh, that's not it. So we're going to reset all. They're going to go through and you're able to create a little bit more fan engagement with items like this, instead of, let's say, like a mix-up or a shuffle game, sort of like traditional stuff around the ballpark. This stuff, a little bit more fan engagement, in my opinion, with this sort of thing. And of course, you'd have the whole stadium sort of going wild as they do it. And again, like, brings your operator right into it in regards to being able to, click on items as they go and kind of like line up where the actual the fan is going with it. From here, obviously, once they would be able to get everything and everything, there's a winner button. It might seem kind of complicated, but at the end of the day, all these buttons are doing are just playing videos. So resetting all, or I'm gonna have to clear it and bring it all back. So showing all is just a video, it's just a trigger that's going to then play these 8 individual little videos of these Whataburger bags that are going to turn around. So as I click show all, those are all just 8 videos that spin around and stop at a certain section. Reset all is just doing the inverse of that. Selecting card 1 is just going to play the card 1 video to flip it over, and reset 1, again, just playing it in reverse. If I pop over to the Prime side of things, and I should pull up the scene here. I think this one's all the way down at the bottom with Whataburger. Just take a second to load. Again, kind of how Logan explained before as well. This is Prime that's running on a networked machine, so showing how we can run Prime and ClickFX on 2 separate machines and make adjustments to graphics, and then see those adjustments actually flip back over to ClickFX. So cool. Just popped into that Whataburger graphic. Again, like in this one, no parameters, no expressions, no logic. All it is just straight up. Sorry, I think I see a question popping in here. Fan select numbers for your wireless interview engagement. Okay, so Rick, with that sort of situation, would you think of having like a controller or something down by the actual fan? Is that sort of where you're leading to? So in this case, and honestly, you could do it both ways if you wanted to. In this case, it's the actual operator following along with what the fan is saying. So the fan's saying, with this one, I want number 1 and number 5. And then the operator's saying, flip open 1, flip open 5. And if they match, he's going to leave it there. Or the operator's going to leave it there. If they don't match, they're going to flip back over. I think that was sort of addressing the question that you had. In relation to what we could do, yeah, you could totally have a controller down by the fan where they're actually, pressing a button, and then that's giving a trigger over to us that's making the adjustment. Awesome. Okay. So yeah, just digging into what this is actually doing here. You can see here down in our scene tree that I was sort of explaining before, we have an image. That's just the background image. We have our intro video. We have a card 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or sorry, I guess no 8, it's this name 9, and the winner. So those are all just different videos that you can see down here on the timeline. We've created different actions. So in 1, just plays number 1. And you can see it goes and it stops. It has a command over here on the right-hand side, and that command is play. And it says hold last frame. So when it gets to the end of this video clip, just stop it. On out 1, the command is rewind. So if I go ahead and play that, I see it flip back over. And instead of, again, like, the conditions, parameters, expressions, kind of tying it to the actual control panel, we just have these triggered, this section here, these actions. The trigger actually ties it to the control panel. So if I pop open my control panel here, I'm not going to have that open at the same time. You can see this. We can see card 1, this button here. And again, this is just a button that I've picked from my toolbox over here. And I can just go to that card, and over here on the right-hand side under properties, kind of where we had the logic kind of built in with the event before. Now, since it's a different type of tool, it's a button, we can see this click drop down, and here are all the different actions that I have. So all of the actions that are down here on the timeline, and these actions are just sort of individual things that are going to happen. And this one, card 1, is tied to in 1, and reset is tied to out 1. So again, those 2 different actions that I just sort of went through. Super straightforward. Again, like once you get in there and start messing around with it, like anybody who's somewhat proficient in an After Effects or Photoshop or anything like that, honestly anything with like a nonlinear timeline, so Premiere Pro, you're going to be able to pick it up pretty quickly. Again, we're using all the same sort of items in regards to keyframes, and you can drag and drop transition effects onto like your different items in your scene tree, kind of how Logan was showing with the dissolve in and out, or the blur in and out for his headshots. Super duper flexible stuff, and thanks for reminding me about that one, Andrew. It's definitely one that at face value you can see it right away, where you're like, oh wow, this definitely it could be an element I could elevate my show with a little bit and engage some fans, something new, something fresh. That's not just playing out a video of matching cups and pausing it and playing it out, but something that I can interact with, and then you can have your creative people sort of go wild with the idea of having these control panels. And once you get better at it and start understanding the ins and outs of Prime and everything that can kind of come along with it, I'm sure there's some awesome stuff that you guys would be able to create for sure.
Thanks.
All right. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in to talk about a little bit more on the XML side, and specifically dealing with the different kind of controllers. The first thing I wanted to do was just pop in our graphic from earlier, and we'll fire up our player selector. And here we just wanted to demonstrate how when we click through these, it goes through and updates. And it doesn't just update the picture, but it's also updating all of the underlying data points as well. And so that would be how you might roll through your starting lineup. Starting line number 1, center field, left field, things like that, and just have your user run down the list and have a very simple process for that. This list is also dynamic. So depending on what is in the XML data, this will update. So if you have a player substitute and come in, let's say, we've got Cole coming in to position 5, then in this window, as soon as you see that change has happened on the field, you just hit the refresh button, and then it'll say Cole will be number 5, and we'll be accessing his headshot and his stats and have all that stuff pop up automatically in the window. All right, so I wanted to talk about the other type of selector that might be available to us, and I'm going to go back and we'll quickly run through this XML source again. We're going to have a file system watcher, and we're going to be looking at the data folder for our MLB scores. Let's call this OOT for out-of-town scores. Just make sure we've got something in here. So I've just got a very basic score sheet. It's not even line score. It's just really for example here. XML data view. We'll create this. Again, I'll just call it OOT. And now we'll go through and do our base XPath. So this is when you click on the button to the side here, this is our XML browser. And this lets you kind of dive down through the different levels of the XML document. In this case, you can see we have a number of different pieces. For our purposes, we're going to pick things at the game level. So I'll click OK on the game level, and then we'll take out, we don't want just get row 1. We want to have all the rows. We'll just set it to 10 for now, and then we'll click OK on that. And if we preview this result, you can now see I've got 4 games right now that are all set for me. And when I create my controller that you saw earlier with Logan, instead of doing a selector, I'm going to do a rotator. So this will be my OOT rotate. We'll pull in our data view for OOT, and we'll just set this to say 5-second intervals. If you had a ton of rows that you entered in, but you only wanted to see a certain number, then you could sort that by some criteria that you select within the table, and then limit to the number of rows you might want to show. That's another option as well. Or you could just limit it in the data view by saying, give me the top 10. That's useful if you are doing something like a leaderboard, like, hey, let's do a leaderboard by batting average. Then you could set up a rotator for that, or actually set up a data view for that, and then use a rotator to kind of rotate through. I know there's a lot of folks who use some data on the ribbon boards, and so you don't have a lot of vertical space. So this is where the rotator comes in, and it's very effective in displaying that information. So if we create a quick graphic, this is just going to be a quick and dirty here. We've got text information. We're going to set this to our out-of-town view right there. Now, if I had picked the XML source itself, then I do get the same browser. And I could go in and just select these manually one at a time and say, okay, I'm going to make this, the home name. But this is kind of cumbersome, and you'd have to do it for each one. Kind of go dive through and grab the exact one each time. You'll see down at the bottom where it does put that number 1 in so that you can display that. And this is really useful for a normal like line score graphic where you're just pulling a single item from the XML, like home score. There's not a lot of, it's not a table-based information. It's more point data when you're talking about that. So there is a case where you would want to assign a text object with a data sheet that goes right to the XML versus the XML view. In this case, I'm going to go to the view, and now we can pull in the home name, and I'm going to shorten that a little bit. And right now it says row 1. I'll demonstrate for you as we go through the table. I can quickly change that to row 2, row 3, row 4. This could be how you do a top 10 that is a main screen top 10 that you just want to display all the information at once. By changing the row there, you change that for everybody. In addition to this, we also need to set it to look at our controller. So I'm going to go back to our data update options and just pull that to the front. And this time I'm going to select the trigger, not the trigger OOT, I want the OOT rotate. So now this tells it to look at that rotator tool for our 5 seconds roll through. Now I'm going to cheat a little bit just by copying and pasting these so that I can kind of quickly get through this a little faster. That's not what I want. I want that guy. And one more for that guy. So now what I'm going to do is just go through and I can just, it's still set to the update option. All I need to do is change the field name. So this will be away name. This one will be a home score. And this one will be away score. Right there. Okay, so all 4 of those are now set to my rotator. They're all set to row 1 for right now. And then I can save this. Let's call this OT rotate. And now when we play, if I go to our output here, then we wait 5 seconds and it'll roll through all of our scores very simply and easily. Now we could take this data and instead of using the rotator here, we could transfer it back to Prime and let Prime manage this with an action, maybe like a roll up or a roll down action, things like that. But this is just a very quick way of setting up an out of town rotator to add to a graphic. And you could have this as an overlay where it just had this chunk and you would just throw that up from time to time, or you could build the whole graphic out that would have all of the full information to show for these games. You could add logos in using the logo selector we saw where it automatically selects the logo for you based on the name. If you have those logos attached to the names that it sees, it can quickly pull those in as well. Style sheets, all the hot stuff that Cole was able to show us a little while ago. There's no data rotator or any kind in the select data controller because the rotators are automatically going to set and be acted upon by the graphic. So really only the selectors are going to show up. You're not going to see a rotator controller in this list because it's already built in. All right. So next I want to talk about pitch speed. And some of the stuff I've done with pitch speed for some of our teams and how we can use that pitch speed to have some cool displays or highlight some information that would be or highlight the data as it comes in rather than having it to be manual. Unfortunately, I don't have a pitch speed automated source right now, so I do have kind of a manual graphic for us to look at. If I go through and view our control panel, I just made it so I can type in whatever number I want to. So if we hit 55 and then take our speed, then we've got an action that simply rolls through and gives us a quick speed. It's set to a delay of 5 seconds and then it goes back to normal. If I pick a speed above that, above the 95 threshold, now we get another action that happens where we are highlighting the speed change itself. And we are going to provide this scene as a downloadable for those of you who have been on our web session today. And I'm going to go through on the other side kind of how one would manage this in Prime and also be able to export and import graphics in Prime so that if you have users who have gone through Chiron Academy and have their own Prime install on their own computer, they can create graphics on their system and then quickly import those into your system for use in Click Effects. So let's jump over to the Prime box again. And we're going to not save any changes. And we're going to look at our Pitchfire graphic. So the important information in Pitchfire right now, if we go to view the control panel, simply have a basic control panel with a text box and a button. The text box is going to populate one of the parameters that we talked about earlier. Actually, it's an expression, excuse me, that populates with a value. And then the value change in the expression will designate once your condition information, the condition logic I've got set up. So in this case, when you hit the button, instead of playing an action at the bottom, it actually fires a condition specifically designed to do that. So when we hit speed choice now, we will evaluate this based on the speed. Is it above 94 or not? And depending on the value in the text box, it'll tell you I'm going to do one action or the other. For these, for the different possibilities, I have 4 actions down at the bottom that we're calling. So if we're going to have this be below 94, then that'll be the second option, and we'll do the action of play the spin score. So when we do that, we have a timeline at the bottom where we're basically going to spin the circle graphic and then have the text appear from the text box. The text will then disappear and it'll flip back to the normal status. So this is the idea of this is that it's a bug that you have in your corner, and we add this particular action and response to score changes. When the score changes in the score bug, it kind of pops up and does this this action. So if we have another item where we're going to mark this with a higher number, so if we go to change this to 100, then we go back to our logic, and when I hit the button for the speed, I've got it set to look at my condition. And so I'll go to condition, and then I can evaluate. Now you can see where it's changed there. It's actually firing my graphic down at the bottom. We're going to stop that real quick and start it over, so we can see what happens on the main output. So at this point, it would then play. Now we have a different action that happens, and we're actually calling it, hiding the image and pulling up a video. At the same time, when we get to the end of these particular actions, we're going to use a trigger to call another action. So swirl out at the beginning, then calls the swirl back in at the end, and that's how we get from this point back to our kind of standard view. And it does that automatically, and that allows me to control a little bit more precisely like what's happening in that particular function that we're calling. So at the bottom, we've got these actions that we can call and have those appear. One other piece is within ClickEffects, you can actually call specific actions from a trigger or from an automated remote button, so that if you have a graphic that does have actions in it that you might want to affect, you can do that as well by calling these individual actions specifically. Okay, so now I want to take this graphic that I've created and I want to transfer it over to the computer where I am actually going to run ClickEffects, right? I created this on my laptop, and now I'm going to move it over and we'll get it somewhere else. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of the playout view, and we're not going to save any changes right now. And I'm going to go to the view menu here, and I'm sorry, tools, and we're going to look at the asset viewer. In Prime, the asset viewer is going to show you all of the information that you have in your scene. So right now it's loading in all the scene files for the NAB 2024 project. It takes just a moment. And once that is done, it's going to display for us a list of all of the different scenes. I can then pull down here from my all assets list and go down to my pitch speed, which is NOP. Hang on. All right, I guess we'll pick a different one. We'll pick this project, this scene right here, stilltest.pbx. All I have to do is say zip assets. It will automatically pull in the assets for the file that are being used. In this case, it's the Chiron logo and the fire video. It will then, you can set to export that, and it's going to ask for a file name. We'll just throw this on the desktop and hit save. So now we have created this stilltest.zip. If I then pop over to the ClickEffects machine directly, just close out of all this, then what we'll do is we'll open up Prime on that machine, and from here we'll go to Tools and now go to Unzip Assets. And Unzip Assets will then let you browse through and find the zip file that you want to use. In this case, we can see the stilltest.zip. You hit open, and the main object here to understand is that the project needs to be selected, and you need to use your team's project. Whether it's basketball, baseball, individual team within your arena, you need to select the project here in order to have it show up where you want it to show up. At that point, you would just hit import selected, and it would import the scene into Prime on that machine. So now you could go through and you could test this and say, okay, does the scene work here? We'll set this to 99. We'll take that. Okay, it looks like it works here. That's perfect. Then we'll run over to the Click Effects box, and we will stop everything out. We're going to create a new graphic on the Click Effects side. Go to File, Import. Within our Scenes folder, we're going to look for our pitch speed PBX file. PBX is a scene file. Click Open. You can see that our logo appears on the side over there. If I go to zoom correctly, there's our logo that tells me that it's imported. It automatically names the graphic for me. So when I hit Save and Close, now I have my Pitchfire graphic, and it's there just like I created it on the Prime side. So it's really that easy to create graphics in one place on Click Effects. Got to make sure to hit Enter there and not Tab, excuse me, to create graphics within Prime and then easily import those graphics into Click Effects. So really, if you think about Prime as your CG tool, or if you're using Prime on site, any graphic you create in Prime can be imported into Click Effects. And vice versa. If you create a graphic in Click Effects, you could then also use that in Prime as well. The other part of this is we might want to tie, instead of tying it to a control panel, we could, if we had an XML source for your pitch speed, then we could tie that automatically in so that as soon as the pitch speed changes, it would then go through and do the same function as I'm doing now of updating the score and then making whatever change needs to happen based on that number. All right. I think at this point, we're going to roll this into, actually, before we do that, I want to roll into a view real quick of our online help page. So I need to reshare my screen to that page. 1 second. And we're going to file this into our meeting. All right, so this is the Chiron.help page. On the left-hand side, you can click on Click Effects. We have guides here. We have tech spec information, so you can kind of quickly go through and see what's available here. We have guides for Data Hub. We have a number of different PDF guides you can download. We also have in the resources section under videos, you can see where we've had the video session from Tuesday, and also we'll have a video session from today that'll be added. Under the resources information and then FAQs, we have a number of things you can look at here for troubleshooting, and also some best practices at the bottom for the different types of boxes. So if you have a backdraft machine or an event system or an SDI system, then all of those can be, you can kind of roll through and see some of our suggestions for how those should work. Now, one thing we didn't mention earlier is that we do have 3 different types of Click Effects system. The first is an SDI only system where you'll have the SDI user interface, and you'll have BNC connections to accept live input and play a live input, and then also play clips and overlay graphics like the bug that we saw earlier from Cole's presentation. We also have a GPU flavor, which does NVIDIA outputs that will go directly to the video processors for your video boards. And we have a third system, which is this box, which is called an event system, which does both the SDI side and the GPU side. And depending on the requirements for your venue, then we will, suggest / sell you a machine that then works based on the capabilities and the functionality that you need. Also, we have another product out there called our Backdraft product. And this is a system that will go through and be able to emulate or replace if a system goes down during a presentation, or if you have a machine out for service or whatever may happen at that point. The Backdraft machine is a live update tool. So it is constantly scanning the systems that it is backing up. In this case, we're backing up 2 different systems, and it's ready to go at the click of a button. So over here, you've got the activate button. What happens with this is it will load in all the settings from GPU 1. It will then launch Click Effects. And then when you go to use Click Effects at that point on this machine, it will automatically have the same view as what you were doing before you activate it. In addition to the activation portion, you can also have this automatically go through and redirect things like a GPU matrix or an SDI routing, and make it so that it's very simple for the user to just say, oh, I had a problem, switch to Backdraft, click the button, everything is going to work on the back end, and now I keep rolling. So this process takes about 45 seconds to a minute to activate and then update all of your external devices. And so it's a solid product. We've had this for a really long time. This is probably our best and most quality product that we have, the Backdraft tool. It's really easy to use. And one last thing about it is it does provide a number of monitors, so you can actually go through and look at the systems that it's monitoring to see kind of what some stats are, and it'll pop up warnings and errors if any occur while it's working in the background. A lot of times this is going to be like, hey, I can't access this folder, or hey, the main machine is gone, I can't access anything, to kind of let you know if there's any problems with the systems that it is backing up. All right. At this point, we're going to turn over to a QA session. So if anyone has a question, then you can click on the hand icon at the bottom of the meeting or simply type into the chat. So we'll give you all a moment just to think about what all you've seen today. We've thrown out lots of information for you at a high rate of speed. So please ask any questions that have come up during the show.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with you. High rate of speed for a lot of this stuff for sure, but obviously it is recorded. Definitely encourage everybody, if you have the time and interest to go back and take a look. Hopefully it's stuff that you might be able to integrate into your show if you're a current customer.
Yep, and you know where to find us also if you have questions about how did this work, how did that work. That's another thing. One of the things that we're really pushing now is to use the full capabilities of Prime within your ClickEffect show, so that instead of just a static cut from one image to another, we add some pizzazz, some flash to it, and then just kind of further improve the show that you're putting on your venue.